All right, everybody, good afternoon. We've got another player to look at today, an outgoing Seahawks free agent. This is another one that will probably be viewed mostly negatively, kind of like I expect Devin Bush to be viewed, kind of the way Phil Haynes was viewed previously. It's Evan Brown. Now, Evan Brown is a little bit different from a guy like a Devin Bush, admittedly, because Evan Brown actually started most of the 2023 season, and by some very loose standard, he is a starting caliber center in this league. Now, he's a starting caliber center by the definition that there needs to be 32 starting centers at any given time, and he's probably among them, but it's kind of a close call. So, I don't expect there to be a lot of excitement around this. I don't expect there to be a lot of interest in bringing back Evan Brown, but let's have the conversation. So, first of all, bringing Evan Brown back as a backup is a little bit awkward. Now, the good news with Evan Brown is he does have a little bit of flexibility. If you go to his PFF page, it'll actually show you that he did play a little bit of left guard this most recent year for the Seattle Seahawks. And if you go back to previous years with the Lions, he did also play a lot of right guard. So he does offer that interior offensive line flexibility. I do believe he is mostly, at the end of the day, a center, but he does offer at least a little bit of ability to move back and forth. However, if you're bringing him back in that role, you're saying he's a backup. He's somebody who can provide backup depth at a couple of different spots. And if you're bringing him back as a backup, then you have to contend with a guy like Olu Oluwatimi and Anthony Bradford. Both those guys are there at center and right guard, respectively. And both those guys are on rookie deals, very cheap rookie deals. And those guys, by a lot of people's standards, are the backups going forward. So you already have a backup center and you already have a backup right guard. They're very cheap. In the case of Bradford, he actually built some starting experience last year. In the case of Oluwatimi, I think a lot of people are hyped on him. I know he hasn't done a lot, but people are excited about what he might be able to do because of what he did in college, which I got no problem with. Excuse me. And that kind of leaves you in a little bit of an awkward position because you typically don't go three deep on the offensive line. So you do kind of have a little bit of a need at backup left guard, so I guess Evan Brown could technically occupy that role, but then we have to get back to the whole point where Evan Brown is likely best as a center. That's where you need to play him. So if you already have a quote-unquote backup center in place in Oluwatimi, then Evan Brown can't also be the backup center. You don't have enough roster space for all these players. So it's going to be one of those things where maybe you can have him occupy the backup left guard in name only, but then you don't really have a backup left guard anymore because Evan Brown isn't very good at that. He's like I said, he's a center, and left guard is not easy in the modern NFL. So either you're planning on making Oluwatimi the starter and Evan Brown the backup. That would work. That would be okay, I guess, but that's a lot of faith you're showing in Oluwatimi, and I don't think everybody's willing to do that. So if you're bringing back Evan Brown, you're probably doing it as a stopgap starter in front of Oluwatimi, or I guess the best way to put it would be he will compete with Oluwatimi for the starting job in camp, and the best man wins, which, hey, that's cool. I like it when the best man wins. But that is an uninspiring center room. Evan Brown and Oluwatimi is not going to get anybody excited. That is a center room that is looking like it's going to produce a bottom five center when the season starts. So bringing him back is already a little bit of a problem. But moving past that part of it, what is it going to cost? Because last year, Evan Brown signed a 1-year, $2.25 million contract with the Seahawks, which, I mean, as much as Evan Brown did not play very well, we got our money's worth. Like, that is a very cheap deal, and I don't know if that was a reflection of the money just drying up and he was left without a dance partner. I don't know if that was a reflection of him being viewed as a very bad player, but the Evan Brown that I saw in Detroit was not that kind of a player, so I was surprised he didn't get more like $5 million a year or $6 million a year. and then he goes out and plays like a player who's worth somewhere between $2 to $3 million. So I guess it seems likely he's probably going to continue to get deals like this. I mean, he's not that old. He's actually just coming into his prime. He might actually be looking at having his best years in front of him in 2024, 2025, 2026. So, kind of tricky, right? Kind of tricky here. Whew, excuse me. Again, gross. And he might get paid something a little beyond this because of that, but let's break this down. Like, you go to PFF, they thought he played serviceably, but not really good. He was just kind of there. He did play most of the season. I will say I think he was probably playing hurt, but that excuse wears thin kind of quickly when you look at the fact that he did play in almost every game and played most of the snaps. So ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're out there, you need to be good enough to play competent football, and there were definitely times where Evan Brown did not look especially competent. But if you go to the list of centers and sort by average annual value, like we always like to do around here, we're going to blow past the first group, these guys up here, the Mitch Morses, the Ruizes, the Ryan Kellys of the world. They're obviously not applicable here. Evan Brown's not on that level. First guy I want to look at just to check in is Garrett Bradbury. Last year he got 3 years, 15 and 3/4, which is $5.25 million a year for 3 years. So in 2023, in 2022, he played quite well, according to PFF. He was generally considered to be a pretty solid center, not great, not elite or anything like that, but he was considered to be a solid player. There were some alarming things in his advanced metrics, I do recall that, but this was a former first-round pick. This is somebody with a great deal of, how should I put this? A great deal of credibility as a good player that maybe is not totally deserved because of his draft stock. I guess you could call it pedigree. So we're definitely not there yet. So we're going to keep going past Garrett Bradbury here. Next guy I want to look at will be Andrew Brewer, who came in with a 1 year, $4.3 million. So call it, $4,304,000 last year to play center for the Titans. And if you go to his PFF page for 2022, he played basically the whole season, and he played serviceably. Kind of familiar, right? Like, this grade looks roughly similar to what Evan Brown gave you. And Aaron Brewer, by the way, played most of his snaps at left guard. However, I think this still works pretty well because in 2023, he played the whole season at center. So they were signing him to be a center. So if we're using the 2023 season for Evan Brown as a comp to Aaron Brewer in 2022, I don't think we're there quite yet. I think we got to keep going. So 4.3, still not quite there. I'm going to go past Jake Brendel because he signed a long-term deal. I don't think that's a great comp. I'm not even going to try to pronounce this guy, the center for the Cardinals, Froholt. We'll just call him Froholt here. Signed 2 years, $2.3 million per year, so 4.6 total last offseason. And what he did in 2022 is he played about half the season and played serviceably well. Again, he showed some flexibility playing center and right guard, kind of like Evan Brown. Didn't do anything too stand out, didn't do anything crazy, but he was enough to get paid about that 2.3, which is basically what Evan Brown got. And to go down a couple more spots, we got Scott Kessenberry here from the Texans. Last year got 1 year, $2.1 million. And this is a player that is considered to be like laughably bad. This was his 2022 season, and he still got what he got. So we've definitely gone too far here, but we're in the right range here. It seems to me that Froholt here is probably about the right territory, and there's been an increase in the cap. So you're probably looking at somewhere around 1 year. I'm going to assume it's a 1 year deal because he didn't play that well. I don't think he deserves multi-year. I think you're looking at something like 1 year, $3 million, somewhere between 2.5 and 3.5 million. So a little bit of buffer on both sides. So 1 year, 2.5 to 3.5 million for Evan Brown. That would be my read based on what other players in his position get paid. So let's call it 1 year, $3 million. Am I doing 1 year, $3 million for Evan Brown? I mean, he'll probably be worth about that. I just want to shoot for better. I just want to draft somebody. I just want to go get somebody who I think is going to be a lot better than Evan Brown. Like, he'll be a top 12 center, a top 10 center. And in fairness, Evan Brown has been that before for the Lions. For other teams, he's been better than he was for us last year. And there could have been extenuating circumstances as to why he couldn't get to that level with us. So if we get him for 1 year, $3 million or so, I'm not going to be upset about it, because there is some reason to believe he's going to regress back to his normal self in 2024, which is a pretty decent center. But at the same time, I can get a rookie that I'm going to feel better about in there for even less money. Now, you have to spend a draft pick, but I'm kind of planning on spending a draft pick on center anyway, honestly. Or, if you are willing to settle for mediocrity like this, just start Oluwatimi. Oluwatimi, even if Oluwatimi's a complete bust, he's not going to be much worse than Evan Brown was last year. And realistically, he'll be about as good. Maybe a little bit better, because there's upside. I don't know if Evan Brown has that upside, even though he's coming into his prime. And you can save a ton of money. So, I'm not going to be against it, but I don't think I'm doing it. I don't think I can make that make sense. So, it's not something that I'm going to diametrically oppose, because he does have some flexibility. I just don't want to marry myself to something that I know is going to be okay at best. Like, Evan Brown can be better than he was last year. He can be okay. But I don't want to marry myself to that when I have options that could be great. But objectively speaking, 1 year, $3 million, he's going to be worth that. All right, I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Probably more videos coming later today, but if not, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Let me know what you think about Evan Brown. I'm not expecting a lot of positivity here, but discussion needs to be had regardless.